and welcome to Nocturnal Transmissions, the fortnightly podcast that brings you dark tales, both old and new, performed by your humble narrator, Kristin Holland. We have an announcement for our role-playing game enthusiasts and the RPG curious out there amongst you. Sound Realms, in association with Chaosium Games, has finally released The Call of Cthulhu, Alone Against the Tide. Sound Realms is an interactive audio adventure app featuring adventures presented with top-class voiceover performances, original orchestral music, cinematic sound effects, digital RPG dice rolls, digital character sheets, skills, spells, swords, and monsters. They have teamed up with legendary games company Chaosium in adapting their Call of Cthulhu-inspired RPGs into Sound Realms adventures. The first of which is Alone Against the Tide, featuring our own humble narrator as the voice of the game. Essentially, we're talking Dungeons and Dragons, but set in the Lovecraft universe. If you're interested in checking this out, you can download the Sound Realms game app through Google Play or the Apple App Store and begin your adventure now. Well, not right now. We are hoping that you'll listen to this story first, but afterwards, well, knock yourself out. And now to our story. But first of all, a warning. This episode's featured tale contains adult content. To be more specific, there are a couple of passing references to activities of a sexual nature that are probably best discussed just between Mummy and Daddy. If you're one of our younger listeners or of a particularly Puritan bent, perhaps skip this one. It's nothing too shocking, but, well, it's for the grown-ups. And so, fellow grown-ups, let's go. Nocturnal Transmissions is proud to present Nathan Batchelor's EDGAR ONE. EDGAR ONE had suspected that going down this rabbit hole would lead to a room stuffed with the low-res mugshot printouts, bottles with drops of soured IPA in the room corners, half-smoked menthols, and old molded remains of burgers in styrofoam containers scattered across the floor like landmines. His room did not look like that, although he'd spent days waking up at noon on the body fluid-stained mattress on the floor. What had come before this phase of his life? Sometimes he couldn't remember. Every afternoon he would make a pot of dark roast coffee using the same cobalt blue cup each time, the one that read Dad Joke Expert, though he had no children of his own. He would sit in the half-finished cherry wood chair, only its legs lacquered, and hunker over his laptop as if it were a holy manuscript and he himself were a monk. There were smooth, rubbed-down grooves on the plastic table where he rested his wrists, and no matter how much he scrubbed the buttons of his keyboard, the home keys refused to give up their dirt, grease, and flesh from his fingers. There was a single notebook on the table in which he'd written to himself, "Who is Edgar II?" But beneath it he'd written nothing, because he, Edgar I, did not have an answer. The front door groaned open and shut, the familiar scrape of a boot dragging across linoleum. Duarte stood in the doorway with a stack of envelopes and phone books. "Know how hard a phone book is to find in this day and age?" Duarte said. He threw down the books, took off his cap, and rubbed at the greasy hair. A single fly buzzed about his head and landed upon his cheek. He seemed unbothered by it. "Couldn't say," EDGAR ONE said. "I don't get out much anymore." EDGAR ONE picked up one of the phone books. Its pages were as stiff as papier-mâché. He found the name and address of a place once inhabited by himself. He showed it to Duarte. "This is the address you got the mail from?" "None other than," Duarte said. EDGAR ONE stared at the envelopes. It was his mail, he believed, not Edgar II's. He tore open the envelopes, all junk mail, 5-year-old deals on turkey by the pound, an old election pamphlet endorsing a local Republican who believed in God's institution of marriage. Edgar crushed the mail in his palms. Later he'd take the useless mail outside and burn it. "Well?" Duarte said. EDGAR ONE had almost forgotten. He pulled out a wad of $20 bills and put them in Duarte's hand. Duarte turned and went to the kitchen. Edgar could hear the bubbling of the coffee pot, and over it Duarte counting the bills out loud. "Already made a pot!" Edgar yelled. "I gotta have it fresh!" Duarte yelled back. "What do you think I am? Some kind of barbarian?" EDGAR ONE turned his gaze back to the screen, looking over forum messages at a site called tomehistorians.com, trying to determine which messages were his and which ones were Edgar II's. He couldn't recall ever having an interest in books, other than the trashy novels he had bought his ex-wife each year for Christmas. How she shoveled those mystery yarns down her throat, like she was an owl devouring small mammals, dislocating her jaw and contorting her body to accommodate the meal. Every day at 3 p.m., Edgar put his sneakers on and took off his shirt and went for a run from his apartment, downtown to the seedy side of town where the houses had boards on the windows and shell casings piled in the gutters. There were decrepit dog houses that he wondered if any dog had ever lived in, or had the dog houses been built simply to deter people from these neighborhoods. There were dark stains on the house curtains, heavy, solid-color things of canvas or corduroy that blocked out all light and life which tried to escape from the interior. Here was the house with the window with the ghostly spiderweb crack. It seemed as if everything about these houses was made to keep people out. The people, when he saw them, scattered like cats, as if afraid by the sight of him. His hair down to the middle of his back, the beard that came down between his nipples, the strange, too long distance and offset verticality between his eyes that made him seem like an inbred prince. He liked coming out here without his phone, in a place where the police didn't care to come. He believed there was a good chance someone would pull a gun or knife on him and demand something of him, money, sex, or perhaps his life. For some reason he believed that such an event would bring him closer to knowing Edgar II. He believed even more so that if faced with such a situation, he would encourage the mugger or would-be killer. "Go on," he would say. "Deliver me." If he could acquire an injury, one serious enough, it might just work. Unfortunately, on this occasion, he did have his phone. It rang. There were few people that had EDGAR ONE's number. Duarte, his ex-wife, his lawyer, A handful of grad students come hikikomori at the university that he occasionally paid for research. "Hello?" he said.
"Yeah, this is Ralph at France Antique Books. That book you wanted, Mr. Stanley, I think I found it."
"What's it called?" Edgar said.
Couldn't say. It's in some foreign language, but my seller tells me it's about demons. Say, Mr. Stanley, are you okay?"
Edgar hadn't stopped running. He'd only sped up. "Demons," Edgar One said. He hung up. He ran until the point of nearing a blackout, peering in windows, making hard eye contact to walkers across the street, grazing the arms of dog walkers, hoping a pit bull or Doberman at the end of the leash would lunge at his ankle or forearm. He crossed roads between crosswalks, hoping for drivers who weren't aware. A man screaming into a cell phone, a tired nurse on her way back from a 16-hour shift. He heaved, his throat working for air as if he were being choked. Dusk was settling over the city when he got back to his apartment. The upper part of his inner thighs was red and raw from the run. There was a man standing outside, staring up at the windows as if looking for something. The shadows of the building hid his face. Edgar passed the man but didn't look at him. The man's coat smelled of mothballs and scotch. There was something disconcerting about the way the man shifted from foot to foot. When he got up to his apartment, Edgar One looked out his window at the man. He still couldn't make out the man's face. He waited there, shirtless, until the sweat had stopped coming. Then he went back down to the street. "You were interested in an apartment?" Edgar One said. "Hey, I'm talking to you."
"There's a man I'm looking for,"
the man said. He kept his face hidden. Edgar wished he'd brought down his revolver. "What's his name?"
"Edgar Stanley,"
the man said. Edgar Stanley is dead."
"I have a message for him. I was told you'd come down."
"You were told the landlord would come down?"
"I have a delivery."
He fished in his pocket and produced a blackened thing the size of a gumball. "Is that coal?" Edgar One said. The man laughed or coughed. It was the noise of iron sliding across iron. Edgar looked down to see the object in his hand. It tickled his palm. When he looked closely by the twilight and shadow, he saw that it moved. He turned his hand to drop the object when it came apart into 100 buzzing insects.
"He said to give it to you."
"Who said to give it to me? What the hell is it, anyway?"
"It is something new, lost, and the man who told me to give it to you, his name is Edgar,"
the man said.
"Edgar Stanley."
Sometimes, when a headache bit down on him so hard he couldn't look at a screen anymore, he'd down a handful of Tylenol, pour a glass of scotch, and flip through the printed-off journal articles his hikikomori payroll collected for him. Everyone had a novel take on the problem. The philosophers believed he was butting up against an identity paradox. The physicists told him a doppelgänger was as impossible as free energy. The psychologists gave him their cards, told him he had a handful of disorders, and recommended drugs he could never remember the names of. They were all, he knew, wrong. He flipped through the book called The Philosophy of Time. He'd read a few of the essays in the book, tried to read them anyway, but he didn't really see the relevance of time to his problem. EDGAR ONE had followed the man for 2 blocks, saying, "Where is he? Take me to him. Who is he?" But the man wouldn't answer Edgar, except for that last question.
Edgar.
"But I'm Edgar," Edgar said. How can I give myself something?"
You gave yourself money.
The man said.
You gave yourself the parchment.
"Yes," Edgar said. I worked for it." The man shuddered in a way that Edgar had never seen someone shudder before. The shudder seemed to come from the center of the man, as if the man were a pond and Edgar's words had been thrown into him. The man rippled. "Who are you?" Edgar said. "Let me see your face." The man ran, and Edgar gave chase. His muscles were still warm from his afternoon run. The blisters on his feet had popped. He could chase the man for miles, and what man could outrun him? The man in the long coat turned a corner just as Edgar was within arm's reach of him. Reaching out threw Edgar off balance, and he stumbled when he rose and looked around the corner. The man was gone. He couldn't sleep. He'd wake and stare at the shapes in shadow that passed outside his window. Birds, he thought, or bats. Occasionally a shape would pass that he swore seemed a human-sized housefly or beetle. "Hello?" he said into the phone.
We need to talk.
It was Ruth, his ex, that bitch of a woman, who'd kicked him out, who'd robbed him of his life, who'd stood on the porch of his house with the cops flanking him on either side, saying, "He abused me." Him yelling, "I never laid a finger on you. I couldn't stand to touch you." Her saying, "Not all wounds are physical." "My therapist told me not to talk to you," he said into the receiver. His body was covered by a varnish of sweat. The air was like a machine press coming down, smashing his lungs flat. He breathed in the scent of himself. He smelled like basil and garbage.
I'm not playing games,
she said.
It's already gone far enough.
"Did he contact you?" he said. Silence on the other side.
I shouldn't even be calling you,
she said.
But this has to stop.
What has to stop?
The pictures you're sending me.
Edgar One wanted to hang up, but he couldn't. He recalled the pictures his lawyer had shown him. Black and white images of Ruth's arms with scars raised like furrows in the soil. Scars that jackknifed back on themselves in the shape of letters and symbols. A razor blade splattered with blood and flecks of flesh. He reached for his dad joke cup, poured in cough syrup and Sprite. Before the foam of the Sprite reached the rim, he started his long sip, embracing the carbonated burn. He imagined scarred letters on his throat, chemical burns that had bubbled and scabbed. What would they spell? How could you do that to your wife? You blocked out the memory, but you did it. You did it. You did that to her.
I could turn you into the cops,
Ruth said.
This is not how you win someone back.
Well, I don't want to win anyone back. He was feeling the lean bubble in his brain. What pictures,
Don't gaslight me.
she said. Are you playing a game with me?
Why would I ever want to talk to you again? I just wanted to tell you to stop before you end up in jail.
Where'd you get the pictures? He said.
How does anyone get anything? My phone, Ed.
Don't treat me like I'm stupid,
We're not arguing about this.
she said.
It wasn't your number, but I know it was you.
Just like you knew it was me who did those things to you, Ed said. Oh, look, I'm sorry. Just send me those pictures.
I don't want to play games, Edgar. I just want to move on with my life.
Just do me this one favor, and I'll never talk to you again, he said.
You said that last time.
She said. Well, yeah, you called me. Remember? She hung up. There was a funereal sky above. The pillars on the top step of the Maguire Museum of Art seemed to lean away from him, as if they would topple, as if the ceiling above, with its inviting angels, muscular arms reaching, faces gasping, or with mouths formed into O's, would fall, until those angelic fingers touched him, crushed his flesh flat between slabs of rock. He squeezed the burrito in his hand and watched the beans, lettuce, and red tomatoes prolapse and tumble out from the tortilla.
Eddie?
The woman said.
You look different than in your picture.
He took a scattergun approach to this kind of excursion. He used 16 different dating apps, each with a profile tailored to the site. He paid his ramen and Starbucks-fueled college students to send messages to women who seemed particularly desperate. She was in her early 30s, he thought. He couldn't remember her name. He liked the angle of her hips and her bad taste in earrings, pink tassels for a museum date. They looked like fishing lures. Love your earrings, he said. Inside, she asked him questions.
What do you do? I wasn't sure from your profile. It said you were researching something?
I'm a philosopher. The museum was the best place to bring this kind of woman. The place was sterile, maintained, ordered, and run with a down-to-the-minute efficiency. Her life was almost certainly not like that. She was, in all probability, an accidental child, certainly unloved in childhood. Perhaps she was a mother who was hit and quit when she peaked in her early 20s, in and out of college, or she was one of those who'd brag about not attending college. He still didn't understand that one. Loaded with student debt or credit card debt or both, waiting basically for a Jesus to carry her across the sand, but too proud to say it. Proud of what? Nothing. Pride for the sake of pride.
Why do you come here?
She said, more thoughtful than he expected. I'm looking for something. He was looking for blood. He'd heard stories of artists pouring their souls into oil paints and drawn spheres and studies. If a soul was there, shouldn't there be blood? He strained his eyes, looking for it in the Renoir, in the Monet. He believed there was some in the Bosch, but he couldn't see it on the surface. It had to be a base layer. Yes, it was there. He just couldn't see it. He wondered sometimes if he had a soul, if he was anything other than the copy of a copy. He was checking his phone for messages from Ruth more than he liked to. The woman had to have noticed. He tried to make it up by buying a dessert at the restaurant, a choufle pie. She had no shame about what she was. He did like that. The restaurant was a step down from the museum, a way to temper her expectations. Sure, it was certainly nicer than she was used to, but he could get her meal for less than $50, and staff here didn't stare like they did at the nice restaurants on the main drag. Those judging eyes which screamed, "I know you're up to something." Here there were mothers and fathers with their children. The staff as well seemed composed of the same kind of people, ones too busy to really stop and look at the world around them, ones too tangled up in their own existences to be aware of what was going on unless someone peeled their eyelids back and stapled them to their brows. "So, what do you like?" he said. Her face turned when she realized what he was talking about. He watched her closely. "Oh, you mean," she said. I'm not like that. I think I should..." "Oh, no," he started. He went into the long, rehearsed speech. He felt trust building. He hated himself for it. After they'd left, when he'd called the Uber, he thought of walking out into the road. He would, but for what it would do to her, the stain it would leave on her life would be too all-encompassing. Another trauma that would probably send her over some psychological edge. He watched cars pass. A black sedan with no plates slowed in front of him, its windows black mirrors. He saw himself there. The cavities of his eyes so prominent, bags that seemed of water beneath his eyes. In the distance behind him, he saw her arms folded over her waist, holding a glittering purse. Her nose kept her from being beautiful. His phone buzzed. Finally, Ruth. "Eddie, you're gonna get hit!" the woman yelled. How kind she is, he thought. His wife had sent a single image. Loading. 220 kilobytes, 1.9 megabytes. He suddenly didn't want to die. But when he looked up, there was a car coming dangerously close, close enough that in a split second, as the car's horn began its long cry, he believed he couldn't get out of the way in time. Then his ass was scraping concrete, flat in his back, looking up the nose of the woman, at the hair and snot and neuronal web contained within. "You pulled me away." "Yeah, I need a ride home," she said. "Oh, we're not going home." The flesh on his ass burned. He liked the pain, a good warm-up for what he planned to come later. The car that had nearly killed him stopped and reversed. It was their Uber. The driver was apologetic to the point of pity. When they're in the back seat of the car, Edgar pulled a long-ribbed piece of steel out of his pocket and passed it to his date. "Do you know what this is?" he said. Oh, I can take a guess. They sell these in gas station bathrooms, some kind of tickler?" She frowned. She wasn't pretty. "Oh, don't tell me this has been used." It hasn't," he lied. "It's called a sounding rod." "For measuring water?" she said. "Not quite," he said. "I don't like things inside me," she said. "It makes me feel like someone else. I'm sorry." "It's not for you," he said. "It's for me." He watched her closely. "Will you do that for me?" he asked. His phone buzzed. Download complete. There was an image of two men, or one man. He wasn't sure. The man or men seemed to be separating from each other, heads tied together by crimson strings of gore and bone, their mouths twisted in a yell. "Bacon's study," he muttered. The car jolted to a stop, throwing the phone beneath the driver's side seat. The smell of burning tire filled the car. There was a popping sound. The woman held her face with both hands. "Jesus, tap dancing! Christ, don't you know how to drive?" he said. "I think my nose is broken." He fished his hand beneath the seat. Tire iron, cigarette carton with a single cigarette, travel-sized bottle of liquor, slippery sexual prophylactic, hopefully lubed, not used. His phone, sticky, hopefully not from the prophylactic. "We're not paying," Ed said.
"Pay or I'll call the cops. Business is business." "You nearly killed him," the woman said. "And you broke my nose."
Ed passed him a wad of cash. He helped the woman out of the car.
"I think I should go to the hospital,"
she said. He looked at her. She seemed some kind of saint, the broken nose giving her a beauty she'd never had before. Her hagiography would be a series of pictures of her nose. "You're beautiful," he said. He thought of the faces twisting, of the black car, of the scars on his wife's arm, of this girl, now beautiful after breaking her nose.
"Call me a cab,"
she said.
"I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but you don't seem like a real person."
She seemed sincere. He didn't know how to handle such a comment. "But your nose," he said.
"I've broken worse things."
After she was gone, Edgar still went up to the room Duarte and he had prepared for sexual exploits. It was a condo with cherrywood paneling, but if you looked closely, you could see the peel of the wallpaper, the real drywall beneath. There were laminated pictures of silverware inside the drawers. That fine china inscribed with the pictorial story of Perseus was nothing more than $10 Amazon knockoffs. That high-dollar whiskey was nothing more than a $1,000 empty bottle he'd bought on eBay, filled with the cheapest Jack Daniels he could find. The woman's words rang in his ears. "You don't seem like a real person." He pulled out the phone. Looking at persons splitting made him conscious of his own body, as if he were coming down from a marijuana high. But he hadn't touched any drug since the lean he'd drank the night Ruth called him. This image was, he thought, precisely the kind of art he had looked for in the museum. But was it even art? It was too raw, too real. He supposed if this was to be considered art, then freshly snapped pictures of head-on car wrecks and murder scene photos had to be art as well. He called Ruth. No answer. She would be up at this hour. She was ignoring him. "Oh, give me one more reason I hate you," he said. He looked again at the image. What reason did anyone have to send this to Ruth? She worked at a library, surrounded by words all day long. He didn't think librarians could have enemies outside of the familial drama that everyone had. Maybe she'd overcharged someone with a personality disorder for a late book, or it was a bitter employee passed over for a promotion. But EDGAR ONE had a hard time imagining such a library employee. Then something jumped out to him. On the image in the background, there was a window with a ghostly spiderweb crack. He'd know it anywhere. "Duarte," he said into the receiver. "Know that house with the spiderweb cracked glass?" "You've mentioned it enough. Take go bad?" Duarte said. "I don't want to talk about it. Meet me there. Bring a gun." "You think I'll leave home without one?" The inside of the place was not quite as Edgar expected it. There was furniture that seemed to be straight out of his childhood. A kitschy couch with a dark-stained wooden frame and fall-themed cushions, each cushion with an identical faux nostalgia barn upon it, something his grandparents would have had. It seemed a home recently abandoned. There were no cobwebs in the ceiling corners of the kitchen or living room. There was no mold to be seen creeping beneath the refrigerator or in the toilet bowl. The place seemed completely sterile, as if some chemical treatment had been applied to the home just before he'd come in, or as if, passing through the doorway, he'd entered a place taped off from the life outside. The gun barrel rubbed against the red and raised flesh of his ass. He wished he had a holster. There were 2 chairs in the living room, but there were no signs of the stage play that Ruth had sent him an image of. No cigarette butts cast off by a filmmaker or photographer. No paint or blood substitute or remnants of special effects plaster splattered on the floor. Why come to this place to stage something like that anyway? There was a sound of a boot scraping across linoleum. He would have known it anywhere. "Duarte," Edgar called out. "You beat me here." The man let out a little laugh that rattled Edgar. The wood frame of the couch bowed and grinded when Duarte sat on it. He took off his cowboy hat and examined the inner lining of it. He fished out a piece of yellow-stained, folded notebook paper and passed it to Edgar. Edgar unfolded it. It was a charcoal drawing, pointing arrows, poorly drawn figures, and the scribblings of a madman. It was his handwriting, but he had no memory of writing it. "Edgar, too, wrote this," Edgar One said. "Where did you find it?" "We wrote it, dumbass," Duarte said. "Don't you get it yet? You spent all that time in the apartment looking for an answer. Guess you didn't get all the brains." "I don't know what you're talking about," Edgar One said. "You've got some explaining to do. Did you send her those pictures?" Duarte put his hat back on. His eyes were covered by shadow. He did not look at Edgar One. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Edgar One said. "You were my friend. I should take this fucking gun and bash your head in with it." "We're more than friends, Eddie baby. What makes you think you're the one, anyway? What if I wanted to be numero uno? Edgar two?" "No way," Edgar One said. "No fucking way you're him." He stood and limped toward Duarte. He rolled the barrel of the revolver. Violence boiled beneath his skin. His body longed for it. There was the sound of footfalls in the kitchen. "It went all wrong," Ruth said. "What are you doing here?" Edgar One said. "Someone tell me what the hell is going on!" The edges of reality were fraying. He believed he'd find Edgar too, but not like this. Not with her here. It hurt to look at her. The familiarity of her made him ache like a tooth. "It's what we did," Ruth said. What we did? Edgar One said. She pulled a book from a messenger bag he recognized, a worn canvas bag spotted with stickers and pins from all the places they'd gone together. Backpacking through Rome, an apartment in Paris, their honeymoon in St. Lucia. Dust particles from the pages caught the kitchen light as she flipped through the book. The particles moved like drunken insects above the pages. I got this from a collector, Ruth said. We were desperate, you and I. And me, Duarte said. You said you'd do anything to fix the relationship, Ruth said to Edgar One. Or was she speaking to Duarte? Edgar, too. Edgar wasn't sure. I didn't want to fix it, I wanted to leave, Edgar One said. I always wanted to leave. There's two sides to this, Ruth said. Look at the book. I don't give a shit about any book, Edgar One said. Look at it, Duarte said. There, on the front binding of the book, was a gaudily painted figure holding up a wreath. There were two inlaid jewels on the far sides of the binding. Opals, Edgar thought. There was also a painting of an insect in the foreground of the cover image, an oversized beetle or a fly. Ruth rolled up her sleeves. Her wounds were barely healed, raised like hills of some reddish landscape. She had trouble moving the fingers on her scarred arm. Here and there were stitches. The wounds had done permanent damage. Edgar One looked away. I wouldn't hurt you. You wouldn't, she said. But he would. When Edgar One looked up, the two of them were kissing. He watched Duarte's tongue slide out of Ruth's mouth. I'm proud of you, honey, Duarte said. Did you ever wish you could get rid of the worst part of you? She said. I think I'm looking at it, Edgar One said. I don't know why I should expect more of you. This part of you, anyway, Ruth said. How much do you remember? About what, us? Edgar One said. I remember fighting, but I never did that to your arms. I wouldn't. We were going through a rough patch, Ruth said. Violent arguments. I was trapped. You suggested it. You had been looking at that book every night. I'd find you sitting in the kitchen in the morning, asleep, drooling over the pages. So we went through with it. Together. Went through with what? Edgar One said. Sit down. Here. She passed him her phone. Watch. On the video, Ruth dragged a razor down her forearm, the blade buried an inch deep, the flesh splitting like petals. She dug her fingers, 2 joints in went her thumb. She pulled out strings of viscera, and was that feathers? From the slit that ran lengthwise from her elbow to her wrist. The cam was shaky, held by someone sitting in the chair Edgar One now sat in. They were in the same place. This place. The video had an amateur porno flick feel to the whole thing, a sheen of anxiety on Ruth's face. This was something not to be watched.
That's not gonna work. It's like that fucking Ouija board.
It was a male's voice, one that lacked all conviction. Not his. Not Duarte's. On the video, Ruth took the bird's nest of viscera from her arm, lengthened it into a strand, and tied the ends together clumsily with her good hand. She approached the cameraman with the dripping crown of gore.
Take the camera in case something happens.
Ruth did as the cameraman said. Edgar One didn't recognize him, but there was something familiar about the way he lowered his head to accept Ruth's crown. The man said,
This is Edgar Stanley. And if this works, I'll be different.
Edgar One looked to the words in the book, written in a medieval hunkered monk style. A drawing caught his eye, a figure crowning another with a wreath of shit-flecked intestines. The sitting figure had wide, glassy eyes. Rightly so. The sitting figure's own entrails were leaking out of him onto the chair beside him, forming into a third, crude figure. What the hell is this? Edgar One said. You, the real Edgar, rather, agreed to this. Ruth said. I didn't agree to shit, Edgar One said. Oh, we agreed, I remember. Duarte, Edgar Two, said. Edgar One was drawn back to the cell phone video by a warbling scream, the awful sound of a voice box being stretched like an accordion. He saw the flesh being torn away from Edgar's, his body. It looked like bad CGI. No, it looked like pre-CGI effects. Things moving stop motion in a swirl of clay-like gore, forming something new in the empty chair beside Edgar. Bones, muscles, nerves, fat, and flesh. There was a being forming, and its face, when the fat and skin had settled like snow on the bone frame, was his, not Edgar Stanley's. Edgar One's. He threw the phone down. That's you, Eddie, baby, Duarte said. That's what you are. Why are you doing this to me? Edgar One yelled. His head swam. He believed, being lied to. Duarte was trying to get at him, and it seemed Ruth was an even bigger bitch than he'd given her credit for. Machiavellianism, his therapist had called it. Who cared if he got violent sometimes? He only ever punched drywall, plaster embedding in his knuckles. He always patched the wall during the weekend, or he let her take it out on him in the bedroom. Those last years had been full of violence. Her slinging the diamond-tipped whip across his back, her throwing rotten fruit at his ass, the stink of it an intoxicant he had to have. The blows came harder and harder. Yes, he'd asked for it, but she'd done it, willingly. He couldn't forget how she breathed, how she moaned while flecks of hot blood splattered on his back. We're happy now, Edgar Two said. Now that the bad part is gone, we can live happily, just the two of us. Ruth had her head down. Look at me, Edgar One said. Ruth, look at me. What is he talking about? You, she said. You're the bad part. What? Edgar One said. I got you out. Edgar Two said. Don't you think we look a little similar? God, it works so well. You're everything bad about Edgar. I can't believe it fucking worked. I'm not, Edgar One said. I am my own fucking person. We didn't know how you'd turn out, Edgar Two said. We gave you a bank account, rented the apartment for you. I visited every day. You were like a zombie or a newborn those first days. We didn't know what to do. But we just had to read further, she said. She hovered a shaky finger over a detail in the book. It was, he thought, an image of a tiny man wearing a mask. But on further inspection, he realized what it was. The silhouette of some kind of bipedal fly creature. Don't you see? That's why this whole thing worked, Edgar Two said. I'm not Edgar Two. I'm just Edgar. You're just the bad parts, Ruth said. The bad parts. And that's what it eats. It just had to find you. It just had to make sure you were the one. There was a buzzing from the chair beside him. The creature was as large as he was, sitting there with its feathered legs crossed, its disgustingly thin arms, its raspberry-textured eyes peering at him, its skin covered with coarse hair, its mouth wide and full of razors. It wasn't wearing a coat anymore. Edgar retched. Just let go, Edgar, Ruth said. You're nothing. You're incomplete. You've always been this way. I'm not, Edgar One said. Edgar One. The beat of its wings was so loud his eardrums felt like they would burst. The inside of its mouth was hot, and its teeth were sharper than Edgar One could have ever imagined. EDGAR ONE by Nathan Batchelor. Now, before we leave you, a quick heads up for those who listen to Nocturnal Transmissions through Spotify. We are in the early stages of converting our back catalogue to include delightful little visual experiences to accompany your listening. Eventually, we hope to have a nice, creepy video art piece for you to enjoy with every episode. This one and the previous two have had the treatment. We hope you like what you see, and that it adds in some small way to your enjoyment of the tales. If that is the case, then rest assured there will be more to come. And now it's time for us to welcome a couple of brand new acolytes to the Nocturnal Transmissions family. Fresh Patreon subscribers, Millicent Andrews and Smog, O chiefest and greatest of calamities. Welcome, Smog, you most especially greedy, strong, and wicked worm, you. And Millicent, I'm sure you share some of Smog's attributes, but far be it from me to dare speculate as to which. Now, if you, like Millicent and Smog, would like to become an acolyte, minion, or esteemed cohort of Nocturnal Transmissions, and enjoy all our exclusive Patreon episodes, just visit patreon.com/nocturnal transmissions and join us. You just might like it, you know. This transmission was made possible in no small part due to the support of the very Patreon subscribers to which I am referring. An extra big thank you goes out to our esteemed cohorts. Kel Wielden, Jerry Taylor, Rachel Brown, Wayne Prince, Daniel Kamienkowski, Jimmy Mack, Doug Standish, Tim Howard, Evan Dooley, Fangora Brown, Adam, Robert Troy Hampton Peterson, Tippy Polo, Crunchy Kirby, Heathen Soul, Alex Brewers, Rebecca Gates, Johnny Kelly, Amanda Moore, Boole Swiftney, and Drenny. Good night, beloved patrons. Good night. Oh.
But when the lazy moon comes out and shadows round you creep, then that's the time to say good night and close your eyes in sleep. In sleep. Good night, good night. I'll see you in the morning. Good night, good night. I'll see you with the dawning. Sunshine will change the night today. Shadows will all be chased away. It's no